Live from the Coachella Valley, time for another hour of the desert scene. Art exhibitions to modernism, music festivals to live theater, big screen, little screen, and very little screen. This is the Culture Corner with Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza. Here's Bonnie and Brayan on iHub Radio.
And welcome to the Culture Corner. I'm Bonnie Gilgallon here with Brayan Mendoza. Hey, Brian, how's it going?
It's going pretty
Everything
good. Everything's good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, but I wanted to start with, just because it's important and it's relatively new news, some sad news that we lost a really talented musician, a desert staple yesterday. Pat Rizzo passed away. He was a wonderful saxophone player. He played the flute, was just amazingly talented. Band leader. He ran the band at the Palm Springs Film Festival Gala for years. Just a fixture in the desert. Played all over town. Did a number of CDs. Played with the late Indy Fraga. He was a friend of mine. I knew him pretty well. Performed with him a few times. But he was just a huge loss for the Valley. Just a great guy, fun guy, funny. Talented, and I mean just enormously talented, and I think he'd been battling some health issues for a while, but we lost Pat Rizzo yesterday, so rest in peace. And again, it's a big loss for the Valley.
I'm sorry to hear about that, Bonnie. I really am. Such a tragedy these days, especially in a time with a lot of tragedies. It hurts.
Losing too many people. It's sad.
It really is. It's a rough time, but...
So what else is in the news that's maybe a little happier?
So, I wanted to talk to you, since you are someone who writes a lot, who've actually mentioned the idea of writing this book. So tell us more about your writing experience with this book that you wanted to write before we move on to our fourth story.
Well, I like to kind of think that I got a little bit of writing ability from my mother. My mother's passed away 10 years ago, but she was a wonderful writer and taught us all, my siblings and I, sort of the value of the written word and how to use it. And this book that I'm working on, and it's a long-term process, it's been going for a while, it's not anywhere close to finished, but it's basically about my experience 6 years ago with, I had a detached retina, and I had surgery for that, and the rehab for that is really excruciating. And I'm fine now, but I wear distance glasses. I didn't before, but for me, it was a very cathartic, emotional experience, and a very big spiritual growth for me going through that. It wasn't just a physical issue and a sad time, and then it's over and it's fine. But it really changed me as a human being in a lot of ways, in a lot of good ways, ultimately. And just about that, what that experience was like, and the catharsis, and what I learned from it. So that's the basis of the book.
And I was going to say that the reason why I wanted to ask you about your writing experience is because our first story is an update, more than an actual news story, but there's a lot of speculation about George R.R. Martin, the man who has written the Song of Ice and Fire series, which is the series of fantasy books that Game of Thrones is based on. And only five official books, along with a few spin-off books, have been published. And it's taken him now officially 10 years to continue, and he's not even done yet, to write the sixth book, The Winds of Winter. And he's talked about in his blog, which has been called Not a Blog, and he said that what I intended as an occasional pleasure and a way to stay in touch with my readers has become a blog, and then he goes on to say, and when a lot of stuff happens very fast, I fall further and further behind. I am hugely behind right now, and the prospect of trying to catch up is feeling increasingly oppressive. And a lot of fans took that as meaning that his writing of The Winds of Winter, which is the sixth book of the series, that it's becoming more difficult for him to write this book. And so I wanted to ask you, as a writer, what can we do to be more sympathetic towards George R.R. Martin? Because he has talked about how, as a writer, he would constantly miss deadlines for Winds of Winter with his publisher, but he would also miss the deadline with his fans too, because his fans are the ones waiting. Now, for you, what insight can you give us as a writer who's been writing a long-term project? What can you inform, let's say, any fans of Game of Thrones who feel a little impatient with the process?
Well, we were talking about this before we went on the air. I don't know I can't imagine the pressure of having a deadline for a book. For this book, if someone said, you got to finish this by XYZ, I probably would find a way to do it, I guess. But it's tough when you're writing a book, when you're writing something really long, a huge project. As I said, I have deadlines when I do theater reviews, but that's like a page and a half. You go see the show and you have to have it in 9 o'clock the next morning. But to have a deadline for a book, what I would say to the fans is try to be patient, because if you don't rush a writer and author, chances are what you're going to end up with is going to be a lot better. Because sometimes inspiration doesn't come, every day at 9 o'clock or every day at 2 o'clock. Sometimes nothing happens for 4 or 5 days, and then you wake up at 3 in the morning with this great idea. So I would just urge fans to be patient. And I think if you're patient, you're going to be really happy probably with the end result.
Now, George R. R. Martin has actually said something like that, where he said that some years have been better for others. Have you had that experience where, like, some years you just write and do such great progress? And
Absolutely. And part of it also depends. Now, if you're someone who is a writer and you've had several successful books and that's your thing, that's your main career, that's different. I mean, for me, I have 4, 5, 6 other things going on. I do a radio show and I teach voiceovers, and I do bunch. So it's one thing that I do. It's one hat that I wear. So sometimes I'll do it and put it aside and go do something else for 6 months. So, sometimes you get really inspired and you do all these ideas rush into your head and you sit down and you're going to write for 3 or 4 hours. And then there are other times when you go blank, nothing good is coming, or you get really busy doing other stuff.
Another thing that he has mentioned, which I wanted to ask you, which was is writing a chapter and then scrapping it, and then having to keep track of what you wrote before and what you scrapped and what you plan on changing.
Yes.
I can see you nodding like yes.
Yes, because I started, when I first started, I did, I don't know what, 10, 15 pages, and I printed that out, set it aside, and then I went back to it like 6, 8 months later, and then I changed a lot of that. So then you have to keep, what's saved in the computer, what's new, did you save the new stuff, did you print it out, is what you printed out old or what you printed out new? Yes, that's a challenge.
And I always feel sympathy for George R. R. Martin, because for me, like, when I wrote poetry, I started writing some poetry, I had to meet like deadlines for class because that's how I started writing. Mm-hmm. And one of the things was that it took me a while to find the inspiration. Like, I would sit there for hours and trying to find the inspiration. Then I go outside and I'm inspired, and then I go back inside and I write it out. And so I feel like in the case of Martin and yourself, I think that sometimes we forget that, like, when it comes to these long-term projects, mm-hmm. that inspiration just doesn't come whenever you want it.
It's not like a 9 to 5 that Monday through Friday. Okay, I'm inspired today. Tomorrow I'll be, you don't know when you're inspired. And
he has said that he's written hundreds of pages last year because he was in isolation. Mm-hmm. But there's also a thing of, like, in his case, I think you and him have a lot in common in this sense, because he goes out to conventions and he does writing for other TV shows. So I feel like to write an 1,000-page book, and he has to not only write The Winds of Winter, but the last book, A Dream of Spring, I feel like it would take a lot of, would you feel like added pressure if, let's say, you had a bunch of people breathing down your neck?
Of course. Oh my gosh, yes. Yes.
And would you feel like it would demotivate you to write if you had like that type of fan base who would be mad because you didn't meet the last deadline?
Well, I think it would be motivational to a large degree, but I also think it would be an enormous amount of stress. And I would be completely stressed out the whole time. Yeah.
And for me, like, I can't even imagine being a writer with that type of deadline, like Martin. And so for me, my heart has always gone out to him, especially considering that he is older. He is in his 70s. Mm-hmm. And I almost has said this, that he almost wishes that he didn't have to take on this big of a scope of a story, because how familiar are you with Game of Thrones? Have you ever seen it?
No, not really. I'm not very familiar. So
it's a really big fantasy series. Mm-hmm. I think that even if you saw like a poster for
I know a little bit about it, not a lot.
It's a huge fantasy series, and the books, each one is between 800 to 1,000 pages.
Yeah, it's a long book.
Those books are long, and so like I'm not unsurprised when I meet people that tell me I've never read those books, because they are intimidating to read 5 books that are 1,000 pages each.
Yeah.
But I feel like in the case of Martin, the fans need to be a little bit more forgiving about that.
Absolutely. Now, has he said that this will be his last one?
No, he has to write an additional one. So Winds of Winter would be the first to last book, and then The Dream of Spring. And some people have said he'll never finish it. And you know what I got to say is, he has actually said, I can live with that. he's talked about how for him, the writer for Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien, that his greatest book, in his opinion, was The Silmarillion, which was never finished.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, I would imagine that, like, when it comes to those types of projects, are you afraid of leaving your work unfinished, like your book unfinished?
No, I'm not afraid of that. I know I'll finish it at some point.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask, because like in the case of like Martin, there's some real speculation that he may never finish it. But I like the fact that he's accepted that, okay, well, if I don't finish it, I don't finish it.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. It'll be a great unfinished
story.
story.
In that situation, I don't blame him. If he's done 5 or 6 and he's in his 70s, yeah, hey, whatever, you know.
And it's a good attitude because the fact is that it's your great, he considers it his masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
And if your masterpiece is unfinished, maybe in some cases that's a good thing, because I can't imagine waiting 10 years for a book. Like, imagine being a fan from 1994 who read the first Game of Thrones book
mm-hmm.
and still waiting 10 years for the next one. I'm going to be honest, I sometimes worry that Winds of Winter, when it comes out, may be perceived as a disappointment just because it's taken 10 years
the
to
build
write.
up is so much. Yeah, could be. Yeah,
it could be that. And
mm-hmm.
in that case, good luck to George R. R. Martin.
Well, we wish him well. I hope that he finishes it without driving himself nuts, and that everyone's happy with it. So,
and moving on to fantasy, did you know the Lord of the Rings Amazon television series that is going to be on the Amazon Prime service? It costs $465 million for one season.
That's insane.
And just to give you some context, Game of Thrones cost about roughly $100 million to produce per season, which was about starting $6 million for season 1 per episode, and now $15 million per episode in season 8. But in the case of Lord of the Rings, it was getting close to $500 million.
That's just crazy.
And Amazon has said that this is they anticipate this to be like the largest, most expensive television show of all time. And for me, I worry a little bit about the cost, because if you don't have commercials, how are you going to recoup your sales? Because you have to get subscriptions to Amazon.
I don't know. That's a lot of money. That's all I can say. Holy moly.
It's a lot of people have actually called it that it's almost like, well, in this case, like the rights separate from the production costs, the rights to the Lord of the Rings, the Tolkien property, actually just all of Middle Earth, was $250 million just for the rights. So I feel like in many ways, like this better be a really successful television series.
Yeah, I would think.
Because, oh boy, I can't imagine.
Now, see, to me, the rights for something being that much, I just think that's obscene. That's
Really?
just too much money.
I feel like in the case of Lord of the Rings, I think the reason why it costs so much is because of the movies.
Yeah.
I think if the movies weren't as successful financially, they might not have given the rights away so expensively. But
good Lord.
I was blown away by this morning, because I looked at my phone and I said $400 million for one season. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your mind around that. It really is.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to our next segment on the Culture Corner. So stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
You're listening to Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza, talking arts and entertainment on iHub Radio's The Culture Corner. Here are Bonnie and Brayan.
Well, there's no surprise. Meghan Markle is not going to attend
I
Prince
knew
Philip's
it.
funeral. Now, it's going to be on Saturday, 3 p.m. I think the time in
England time,
and it'll be about 10 a.m. Eastern time, which would probably be New York time.
Mm-hmm.
And oh boy. So, to be honest with you, I think that her not attending is probably for the best.
Wise move.
Yes.
Yes.
And I feel like in this case, you got to get Harry over there and say goodbye to his father.
It was important for him to go. Absolutely. It was important for his grandfather, important for him to go. But I think it's and I know she's pregnant, and that's the official reason they're giving was she shouldn't be flying when she's pregnant. But it's kind of convenient. I mean, it was a good excuse for her not to go, but I think that was wise.
It's a wise decision, not only because for her health, but also because I feel like, I'm going to be honest, I think she just doesn't want to be the center of attention. I think that if she goes, it's going to be all about looking at her, too.
And I don't think the family really wanted her there, to be honest with you, because she's caused a lot of tension in the family, and they're trying to have a dignified funeral. So the last thing they want is her there and people maybe getting into snits and stuff. It would have been a big mess, I think.
And to be honest, like I wouldn't say, I guess the way I would say it is that, like, I think it's one of those things where sometimes as grown-ups we have to realize we're not going to have to be at everything that our family's going to be
exactly.
at, Like, I feel like in some cases, like, I've been at family reunions where I've avoided some family reunions because of tension, and I said to myself, it's probably for the best that I'm not there, because I don't want to be there and some people don't want me there, and why should I be there?
Yeah, and she hasn't been part of the family that long, so she really didn't have a long relationship with Phillip. So, I think, this is definitely the best situation is the way it is now.
And 30 family members will attend the funeral, and it's going to be mostly CDC, not CDC guidelines, but like the COVID-19 guidelines for England, and that it's going to be pretty evenly spaced out. They're not going to wear any military outfits. And like you said too, you were saying in the break that they're going to be not next to each other from what you've heard. And well, I mean, it's going to be a different kind of funeral, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I think one thing for sure, it's that it's not going to be as like, I don't think it's going to be as impactful to a lot of people as like Diana's funeral.
Oh, no, no.
And I think the only person whose funeral will ever match that would probably be
the Queen.
The Queen herself.
Yeah.
And because Prince Philip to me has always been sort of like the man that loves the woman.
Yeah, in the background a little bit. Yeah.
Little bit.
That was his role.
Are you going to watch the funeral on television?
Probably not. I'll wait and see snippets. I'm sure they'll show clips of it somewhere. I got other stuff I got to do. So probably not. No.
Oh, yeah. And like, you know what? Talking about Saturday, I'm going to go to your show Saturday. You should tell everybody about your show.
Okay. So, and I think we're sold out. I think because they're having it's a small group. It's just, they're following guidelines just like everybody else. So just small. I think they're limiting it at 30 or 35 or something. Yeah. So Siobhan and I are doing our show again tomorrow night. Bosom Buddies, Saturday night at Runway. Shows at 7:00. And it went really well last week. A couple little glitches here and there, but went really well. Mark Caney on the piano. But it's a really fun show. So we're looking forward to that. Glad you're coming.
I'm going to try to see if I can. I was going to buy a ticket right now to actually.
Check real quick. I think there might be one or two left, but you better check fast.
Quick, I got to do that. Let me see.
But I hope that Harry and William patch it up. I would hate to see. I mean, they've been close brothers. They've been through a lot together. I would hate to see their relationship sort of destroyed. Because of Meghan Markle. I'd hate to see that.
I feel like in the case, like, I to be honest, I think the brothers, actually, I can get a ticket right now. So
do it.
Instead of going to watching the funeral, I'm going to go to Bonnie's show and your show too. There's tickets. But I was going to say that I think for me, like, the brothers are the ones who could probably fix the relationship the most.
Yeah.
And for me, it's one of those things where I would encourage people to, like, who have family problems, like, hey, it's never too late to fix your problems.
Talk it over. Because life's too short, and you don't want to end up having regrets and saying, God, I haven't spoken to my brother in 20 years because what a tragedy that would be.
It's funny you say that because my father actually has always had issues with one of his sons, and he hasn't talked to him in years, and it's
sad.
And my dad has had times where, like, there was a time where my father was sad because it actually turned out that they told my brother. My brother my full brother, because this brother is a son from a previous marriage that my dad had. So my half brother told my actual brother that he was in the hospital, but never called my dad. He said, "Hey, tell dad that I'm in the hospital." But it was like 3 days. But it was like literally several hours afterwards, and it was like almost like offhanded. And my dad tried calling him because he was conscious and all that, and it turned out that he was actually really saddened by that because he had heard that they called my dad's ex-wife.
But didn't call him, yeah.
And
that stuff is, I mean, gosh, and I know a lot of us have been there and we've all done silly, petty things. But you know what? Life is too short for that stuff. It really is. With family, whatever your problems are, talk it through, talk it over. It's one of the big advice Wayne Dyer has on his tapes. If you're angry at somebody or a family member, whatever, talk it over. I mean, one of the things that destroys relationships is not talking about it. And
I think during these times with the pandemic, I think that we need to
even more important
get people to talk, because you never know when the next one's coming,
and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. You could drop dead, be hit by a bus. You don't know.
And that's true. But we have a guest coming on, don't we?
Yes, Leanna Rodgers, who is a wonderful singer, and she is hot right now. She's singing everywhere in town, got all kinds of stuff going on. So we'll talk to her in just a moment. We'll be back in a bit on the Culture Corner.
The curtain rises on local and regional arts and entertainment. From music to theater, films to fine art, it's the Culture Corner. Get connected. Call 760-544-TALK. That's 760-544-8255. Here's Bonnie and Brian on iHub Radio.
And we're back on the Culture Corner, and now we're joined by my buddy and a wonderful performer, Leanna Rodgers, who is all over town. She's really hot right now with her hubby Miguel on congas. Hey, Leanna, how are you?
Hi, Bonnie. How are you?
Good. So you got all kinds of stuff going on to talk about. So tell us, first of all, there's like 5 or 6 places that you're playing. So tell us where you are, first of all.
Yes. Well, we have a residency every Monday evening at the Wine Lounge, which is on Tockwitz, right across from the Regal Theater.
Okay.
And that's every Monday from 5 to 8. Really great. It's a hot ticket in town, so you have to call and make reservations because they turn people away. They're so busy. It's a wonderful feeling. So, and then we are also at the Roost Lounge, which is in Cathedral City, and that's twice a month. And our next show is on Wednesday, April 28th, from 6 to 9.
Okay.
And then every Saturday night we are with our trio with Tristan. He's an amazing guitarist. Latin fusion, pop, anything you can think of with his beautiful guitar, and myself on vocals and Miguel on congas, and that's at Babalu's every Saturday evening, late evening, from 9:30 p.m. to midnight, and that's in Palm Desert, right off of El Paseo, again, Babalu's. And then we are at Hunter's twice a month, and that the next gig will be Saturday, April 24th, from 3 to 5, and of course Hunter's is down on Arenas in downtown Palm Springs. So, and then I have a little secret to tell you. You're actually the first one to hear, or hear the announcement. We are now. I'm going to be producing a first Thursday of every month at the Wine Lounge, a surprise drag pop-up production at the Wine Lounge. And the showtime will be 7 p.m. Again, that's once a month. And what I have is a surprise drag queen that shows up and lip syncs to my actual singing. So I'm really excited about that. We just finalized the details, and you can find tickets at leannalive.com. That's Leannalive.com.
Oh, that's fun. That should be really fun. And
I know. I'm so excited.
And so is it going to be a different drag queen each time?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been making friends with all the wonderful drag queens. I've done shows with them, different ones, and I've kind of put the feelers out, and I've got some really well-known drag queens that are going to be showing up, and you never know what you're going to get.
Oh, that's exciting. Really exciting.
I know. So it's something that's been on my mind since COVID hit, and I was like, well, what am I going to do once we return to the stage? And I'm really excited about it because it'll be utilizing my acting as well as my singing talent. So yeah.
Now, so I have a question for you because Eric, my sweetie, is a piano player and violin professional musician, and we work together occasionally here and there, which is great. I don't think we would do well. We've both decided this. Working together a lot and living together. I think we'd get on each other's nerves after a while. So how do you guys manage not to do that?
Well, we've been married for 18 years, and he's actually, the story goes as he's always seen me perform with different bands in LA and Orange County and on stage and theatrical productions, and he's always had this secret desire to want to perform with me. And he one day was like, you know what, I'm going to really master the congas and drumming and, talk about midlife crisis. It wasn't a car or a motorcycle. It was in the garage for over a year, just learning the conga and really mastering it. And I would peek in the garage and be like, what are you doing? But now, I mean, it's such a great partnership. I mean, he's not only my conga player, but he's also my roadie, my lighting tech, my sound tech. I mean, I couldn't do it without him. It's been such a blessing.
Yeah, so 2 questions on that. First of all, when he first said that, were you a little skeptical? Or did you just like, okay?
Absolutely. If I'm being honest, absolutely. Come on. I mean, we have 3 kids at home and a mortgage to pay. And so I was like, oh my gosh, he went from working with neurologists in the medical field to losing his contracts. They closed, and so he was like, well, this is the best time, that I can take the opportunity to really hone my craft. So at first I was a little skeptical, I must admit, but I was still supportive, but very apprehensive. So, but it's paid dividends, absolutely. So it's been a blessing. And
also, but what an advantage to have him as the roadie sound light person. That's so helpful to have. My gosh. Oh
my gosh. And you know what? I couldn't do it without him, honestly, Bonnie. It's one of we have so much equipment that we bring in. We've got monitors, speakers. I mean, we've got everything, and I'm not really technically savvy, as it were. I mean, I'm great with performance and connecting with the audience, but as far as the technical side, I really have always had a difficulty really understanding technical things. So
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you on that.
And at first when we performed on arenas at Stacy's, that was actually at Oscars and then Stacy's, that was before COVID. He wasn't really a stage performer, so I had to kind of guide him on how to perform and engage with the audience, and because he would sit there and play his drums, but I'm like, okay, you have to smile, you have to engage, and then he would look at me like, so I would have to give him cues, silent cues, like, okay,
smile now,
smile now, or take it down, not so heavy on the drums, So I was actually a conductor as well as a wife. So it was wonderful to see his talents blossom in that regard. So.
And so you've managed to pretty much avoid any conflicts or spats in the middle of all that. I'm amazed. I
mean, the boys on arenas, they just they love him. No, I'm just kidding. It's one of those things where we understand that people want to engage with us when we're not on stage, and so we don't take it. There's no jealousy involved. It's all positive, and he understands that our job is to make people feel welcome, not only on stage but off. And so I'm constantly, when you come to my shows, I'm constantly out there, meeting people eye to eye and getting to know people. I think it's so important, and that's what I think creates that camaraderie and that connection with the audience that they don't necessarily get, with the big live bands. So,
Now, were you do you guys practice COVID thing? Were you nervous about that, getting out there again with COVID? I know things are opening up, people are getting vaccinated, but there's still, people are still a little wary.
Yeah, I was a little bit apprehensive. Of course, I made sure I wore my mask when I got off stage and spoke to people, and then no handshakes, no hugs, which was really hard because, prior to COVID, it was all about the hugs and the personal connection. So people understand, and then not going out into the audience to work the crowd. That was another aspect that I forgot, like how hard that was for me to restrain myself and just stay sequestered to the stage area. So that was a big change. but it's getting better as the months go along. So, because we started back in February, so I think people with getting their vaccines and and being healthy, I think people are starting to loosen the reins a little bit.
Yeah. So tell me about the music. So you do a lot of Latin stuff. Is that kind of your main genre? Would you say?
Yes. That's actually how Miguel and I met. It was my first time salsa dancing in a club called the Mayan in L.A., and I saw him across the dance floor, and I fell in love with salsa, and we fell in love that night. And then I was trained in jazz and classical voice, and then I realized I'm like, I love Latin music. I love salsa. There's just something that resonates with me deep in the soul, and so I went up to one of the bands one night at one of the clubs we were at, and I said, I want to perform with you. And they were like, who is this white chick? And so he said, okay, we'll show up at our rehearsal studio in Pasadena, memorize Gloria Estefan's Mi Tierra. And I took it home and I learned it phonetically because, I do understand a lot of Spanish, but I'm not completely fluent. So I literally just learned it phonetically and showed up to their rehearsal studio in Pasadena, and I don't think they really thought I was serious. And then when I sang with the full 8-piece band, full horn section, drums, congas, everything, they were like, oh, okay, well, you're hired.
That's great.
So we toured, different clubs, the club circuit in LA and Orange County for many years. And then, I took a break and had some babies. And, and then, did some theater when we first moved here to Palm Springs, and then started the music. It just, I always had a desire to do live music in Palm Springs. I just didn't, I had to get my bearings and a feel for the town. And that was 7 years ago. And it's been a whirlwind of amazing things and possibilities that have come. And it's such a blessing. I take none of it for granted.
Yeah. I love to, because I interview a lot of singers, and I'm a singer too. Do you vocalize every day, and do you have any pre-show rituals that you do?
Yes, I actually I warm up on our drive to the gig. Sometimes I'll warm up at the house a little bit, and then in the car on the ride over, I'll do my warm ups, and I'll say, what do I say? Miguel's here listening too. I say me, and stuff like that. And then he responds and goes, you.
Yeah.
So we just have a little insider thing on that. But I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question?
And do you have any some people, say a prayer or go stand off by themselves for 5 minutes or wear lucky jewelry? Do you do anything like that?
Sometimes I do. It depends on the venue. I will do a short meditation. I actually do this a lot when I'm doing theater as well. But music, I'll just imagine a positive white light in the center of my forehead, and then just pull the white light down through my body all the way to my toes, and this is all breathing while I'm doing it. And then I roll up the white light. I roll it up with every breath, and I bring the white light back to the middle of my forehead, and then I project the white light out into the audience that I'm about to perform to, and that really helps me be grounded. And then I give the audience a big air hug with my arms. I put my arms out and I just hug myself, and I bring their energy in with me, and it really helps me to realize that, we're all in this together. They're experiencing something, I'm experiencing something, and we're all having the experience together. So
I love that. That's great. That's fabulous. Okay.
Thank you.
Because we're getting short on time. So let's see. Today's Friday. So where are you in the next 2 or 3 days?
Okay, we're at Babalu's Saturday evening from 9:30 to midnight with our trio with Tristan, and then we are at V Wine Lounge on Monday night. From 5 to 8. Okay. Make sure you call, make reservations. And, of course, I have everything on my website. So if you go to leannalive.com.
Okay, super.
You'll find everything there. I have our entire April calendar where you can find us on social media, whatnot. So.
Okay, super. Well, congratulations to you and Miguel. I know you guys are out and about. One of these days I'm going to have to come out and see you. But
I would love to have you come up and sing a bit or.
All right, sounds like a plan. One of these days I'll do it. Well, listen, stay safe out there. Have fun, and thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Bonnie. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, you too. All right.
Bye now.
Back with more on the Culture Corner in just a bit.
You're listening to Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza, talking arts and entertainment on iHub Radio's The Culture Corner. Live from the desert cities of Southern California, here's Brayan and Bonnie.
So politics is getting involved in entertainment right now.
It bleeds over a lot.
It bleeds over. So in this segment, think of it as half politics, half entertainment. So let's start off with the more heavier story, and then we'll end with a little bit less heavy one. They're both heavy.
Yeah.
So if you are familiar with the Black Lives Matter movement, you're familiar with the name Breonna Taylor.
Yes.
A really tragic, horrible thing that happened. And so Simon & Schuster got into a lot of trouble, not because they were directly involved in this one thing, but because of an imprint company that they work with. So Simon & Schuster has pulled out of distributing a book that was being proposed by Louisville police officer Sergeant Jonathan Manning, who shot Breonna Taylor, the man who
actually pulled the trigger
and shot her. He was proposing to write a book called The Fight for Truth, the inside story behind the Breonna Taylor tragedy. And I gotta say, Simon & Schuster, they said, like much of the American public, earlier today, Simon & Schuster learned of plans of distribution client Post Hill Press to publish a book by Jonathan Manning. We subsequently decided not to be involved in the distribution of the book, and they pulled it out. And this kind of spread pretty quickly, because when social media heard about the book, Margaret Atwood had actually promoted a book from Simon & Schuster, so she got involved in it too, because they said, why don't you call out Simon & Schuster too? But this was a case where I gotta say, this is the right move.
Absolutely.
And in my opinion, to be honest with you, like, I don't even think the conversation I mean, I'm gonna be honest, like, what would this book even bring to the conversation, in my opinion? Like,
nothing.
To me, it's like, it's just going to be more division in the literary community. Not the literary community, but just the community in general. Just like, I think it's a good move to not publish the book, because I feel like from a marketing standpoint, how are you going to market that book?
Yeah, and he should not be making a dime off of this at all. At all.
This is a real, someone died
a completely innocent person died who was sleeping in her own bed in her own apartment.
Someone died, and that's the thing, is that, like, you shouldn't be making money off of someone's death like that. And like, look, if he has something to say, there are plenty of news outlets, especially one that starts with an F.
Go do an interview if you have to. If somebody wants to talk to you.
Like, Fox News would do it for him.
I'm sure they would.
They will go on Fox News and get interviewed, because that's where they're going to probably listen. Because, like, this book, I don't even think it would sell.
I don't think it would sell either. I really don't think it would sell.
I think the thing would be, people would boycott it, first of all. And second, like, who would this appeal to other than, like, a certain type of audience who don't, and I'm not saying this to be sort of mean, because I don't think you're better.
Maybe don't read that much.
Yeah, like, I'm not to say it in a mean way, but, like, the audience that would want this is statistically less likely to purchase a book.
Yes, you're right.
And that's just not, and it's not to say you're any better or worse for not reading books. It's just, it's one of those things where it's like, it just doesn't add up. And I feel like it's not only from a marketing standpoint bad, but it's also like, what would you gain out of it? Like, I wouldn't gain anything. I don't think, like, reading it, I think I would just I think everyone knows my opinion on this. I think I would be very angry reading
Let's talk about Will Smith.
Will Smith.
Enough of that guy.
Enough of that. But that was a story. Will Smith. So again, with politics and the social movements, Will Smith has moved the production of his movie Emancipation away from Georgia over the recent voting laws. Now,
Good for him.
The voting laws have been criticized as promoting voter suppression aimed at reducing the turnout of people of color. And these voting laws were passed because of the many conspiracy theories regarding the 2020 election and unfounded claims of voter fraud. And also considering that Georgia voted for a Democrat in the for the first time in a long time. And I think that I think it's a good Will Smith actually said, at this moment, the nation is coming to terms with its history and attempting to eliminate vestiges of institutional racism to achieve true racial justice. He goes on to say, we cannot in good conscience provide economic support to a government that enacts regressive voting laws that are designed to restrict voter access. The new Georgia voting laws are reminiscent of voting implements that were passed at the end of Reconstruction to prevent many Americans from voting. Regrettably, we feel compelled to move our film production work from Georgia to another state. And I would say that is...
It's his right.
It's his right to do it. It's his right to do it. I think that's the best way to put it. But I also think that it in some ways, some people have said that it's a bit of a tragedy because a lot of black a lot of black
who would have jobs won't have those jobs.
Yeah, and it's sad because Georgia does have a very strong black community who surprisingly are the ones that voted overwhelmingly Democrat. And so in many ways it's sad that they're going to suffer
to a certain degree. Although I bet you if you ask most of those people of color who might have gotten a job on the Will Smith movie, how they feel about it, that they would probably say the cause is important. It's worth it.
Oh yeah. And the thing is, I think it's important that when there's a social movement or something that's going on, if you have the power to sort of make some small implemental change,
statement, but with something that you do, and it's worth it. Yeah.
And for me, it's I guess in some cases, if there was one thing I would do, for example, if someone said, you got to boycott your own show because of this and that, I don't know if I guess I would, to be honest, in some cases.
It's something I felt strongly enough about. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's get in one more thing because we have a few more minutes, because I found this fascinating, that Mia Farrow had lost 3 children, one to a drug overdose, one to
AIDS, and one to suicide.
Yeah, which I'd been in the dark. I didn't even realize that because this was several years ago. So now there's some weird rumors floating around.
So Mia Farrow, the Woody Allen Mia Farrow documentary came out, and
another whole thing. Yeah.
That's a whole conversation. But one of the parts that people brought up was the idea that Mia Farrow wasn't perfect when adopting kids. And she's even stated in interviews that her family life is never perfect. But 3 of her kids being dead has been the subject of speculation about.
And were they all in teens or 20s when this happened?
One of them was in their 20s, and the other 2 were 2 of them were in their 20s. One was 17.
Okay.
The one who, I think, the one who died of AIDS was 20, and one of them died at 17, and it's painful.
That's a bad track record. They were all adopted though, right?
They were all adopted, but a lot of people had made a lot of speculation about why are 3 of her kids dead. And in my opinion, I kind of want to tell our audience, I think it belabors the point when we talk about the Mia Farrow Woody Allen conversation, because to bring up 3 dead people is not, in my opinion, productive. You know what I mean? So
it's curious, and that might be worth a whole investigation on its own, but it's a separate issue.
Yeah, and I would tell and I think Mia Farrow has every right to defend what happened, because those are horrible tragedies.
maybe they were all troubled kids. Maybe she'd like to adopt troubled kids. I don't know.
See, that's what she said a lot, was she adopted kids that would have problems at home, and then she would help them out, and one of them was a suicide, which was unfortunate. And in that case, we should be compassionate rather than using it. But we have a guest coming up on our next hour.
Yes,
right?
Another singer, Cynthia Thomas, about 2:06. We'll be back in just a bit on the Culture Corner.